it's time for a letter from Wellington for Councillor Tony Randle. Tony, what school did you go to? Dunstan High School?
I went Dunstan High School in Alexandria, yes, good country school.
Yeah, well, it didn't hold you back, did it, really?
No. Well, I had a little bit of help because my father was the head of science.
Was he really? I did not know that your father was a school teacher. Oh, Stan Randle,
yes, Stan the man. Is it what? And of course, when you're little, when you go to high school, you become a little Stan for a while. And no, that was great. I had a really good time at high school, and I thought the school sort of punched above its weight when it come to some of the stuff. But it was definitely a country high school, and most of the guys went on to work, stay in Alexandria, and I went off to university.
To be fair, it still does. It's got a very good choir, I think, that's always done very well. They've got a particular music teacher there that I think looked after it. I think he might have been there when you were there. They do very well in rowing because they've got the dam just right there, Tony, on which to practice.
Yep.
And their rugby team is always very competitive. So, yeah, no, you're right. The roll, I think, is about 500 now, and they've Form 3 to 7, what's that? Year 9 to 13 still. So there's about 550. It's a co-ed school. You're right. They punch a long way above their weight. You had a younger brother as well, Dean. Is that right?
I've got 3 younger brothers and 2 sisters. But yes, Dean, because of various things, I actually went to university in the same year as my brother Dean, who's a year younger than I. And that was interesting hanging out with him. And yeah, and that's what, our paths crossed, of course, way back in the 80s.
Yeah, well done. Actually, somebody's just pointed out Polkinghorn. You couldn't make up a surname like that either, says John. No, that's right. Are you watching that case, by the way, just out of pure prurience?
No. I tend to be following more of what's happening overseas because the craziness of the world means that, what's happening in America with the presidential race, even the United Kingdom's got a new government and what's happening there. So I haven't gone to the more tabloid side of things. Just been too busy.
No, fair enough. No, it's all right. No problem with that. In fact, good on you. Have you been watching the Olympics?
I haven't been watching the Olympics, but I've been following it on the radio news, and it's interesting how it's got the same drama as every year. I mean, sport is so wonderful because people are putting it on the line, and even the things like the cheating and that sort of stuff.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yes. And
we're the New Zealand women's soccer team in the middle of this, and good on them. I mean, they weren't the cheats, of course. But
they're useless at soccer. The amazing thing is that the Canadians are quite good. In fact, they won the gold medal, I think, at the last Olympics. New Zealand's useless. It's like the All Blacks deciding that they're going to go and play, I don't know, Vanuatu or the Cook Islands and send a drone over. You think, what the hell? Why would you do that?
I don't know, but I think some countries, and look, it's very competitive and win at any cost. I mean, some of the people who get to the top win at any cost sort of people. And it just, it makes you feel a bit sick because sport is all about, following the rules, and good sport is about people just stepping up on their own merits.
Yeah, good luck on that. I mean, sport's dominated by drugs now and chemists as much as it is by coaches and athletes. So I must admit it's lost a little bit of its lustre for me. All right, except when I see those magnificent beasts parade around as they run, and I think that's next week where the running events start. All right, mate. Now, in Wellington, what's been going on? Oh, look, can I just... The last time we talked, you were talking about the US Supreme Court removing the Chevron deference. Remind me again of that, will you?
So, Chevron deference in America is where... if Congress writes a law and it's not very clear, then the agency gets to interpret what the law means and also gets to adjudicate on whether the law is being complied with. And, that's called Chevron deference. So it means that the courts, if you complain about being charged a fee for example, in this case, it was about monitoring, having to pay for people to come on and monitoring your fishing boat and being charged for it. And you said, I shouldn't be charged for it. You have to go to the agency that wants to charge you, and they decide whether it's fair or not for them to charge you. And if you appeal to the courts, then the courts will always side with the agency. That's up until this decision. So the courts were always going to side. That's why it's called Chevron deference. It means the courts are defer to the agency. And so the agencies, were just running amok and making decisions about, on private individuals and companies about what the law meant.
That sounds like New Zealand and our bureaucracy. But you're suggesting that in America they had a legitimate reason to do so because of this particular defence.
These big agencies, they literally have their own courts, quite literally, and you go and you present stuff. But the people who are sitting on the judge work for the agency that's in charge of implementing the law. So it's a bit like this, the city council taking, if you want to appeal your resource consent, you go and you have to go to the city council and appeal their own decision about charging you for a development fee, and the city council will decide whether or not its own ruling was fair. So it's it's really a usurpation of power, and the Supreme Court, after many, like about 4 or 5 decades since it came into being, the Supreme Court decided no, you can appeal to an independent court on these things.
And rightly so. Well, New Zealand's got the same problem. Listen, just while you was there for a second, and I know it's not something we're planning to talk about, but I'm just interested in your views. In the last 24 hours, 48 hours, I've been following a particular story. You've probably been following it as well, to do with Health New Zealand. Now, as you know, they sacked the board of Health New Zealand. Lord knows why there's a board in the first place, but there you go. I mean, that's just crazy. That's just a construction of a new governance arm that's not required. But anyhow, there you go. They've put Lester Levi in as the sole commissioner. And then in the last 24, 48 hours, Shane Reti, the Minister of Health, Dr. Shane Reti, and Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister, have talked about there being 14 layers between the governance decision makers and the patient. And the suggestion is that that's how bloated the bureaucracy is, because there's all these people in the middle doing essentially nothing but getting paid extraordinarily well, meaning that the Joe patient is really at the bottom of the line. Some of the media are pushing back on that and saying, well, some of the layers you've got in aren't fair, and one of those layers is the doctors, so come on, they're actually doing it, blah, blah, blah. But as a general rule, do you have a sense in Wellington that there is a bloated bureaucracy, that there is a large number of people working in Health New Zealand or any of those government agencies who really shouldn't have a job?
They really shouldn't have a job. I think the bureaucracy has become bloated, and I've just seen, for example, Councillor, who in the housing side of things were just going crazy, buying up houses, doing innovations, throwing money around, and there were whole teams of people. When the City Council was doing its district plan, Councillor came along and spent something like $500,000 on lawyers and consultants to come along and influence the Wellington City Council's plan. I mean, which was crazy. I mean, they're a social housing provider. They should be busy spending that money on building affordable housing. And yet here they were being an influencer as a bureaucracy on what an individual city was trying to do. And when they're not under a clear mandate, they tend to just write their own ticket about what their role is. The layers of the multiple layers. I mean, when they consolidated health is an enormous industry in New Zealand, and if you decide to put it all in one government department, it becomes a bit like MSD, and I'm probably MSD's got 14 layers of management inside of it as well. It just comes when you have an organisation has thousands of employees. I mean, everybody has to be in a team. Every team has to have a manager, and managers have to get together in divisions. And the layers and layers go on, and they do lose touch with what's actually happening on the front line.